Welcome, everybody, to the 100-Year Lifestyle, where we are transforming health and longevity worldwide so that you and your loved ones can live at 100% through every phase of life to 100 years and beyond. And we have here a good friend of mine over the years, shared the platform in several places, and a warrior for your health, your family, for all of us, honestly. So, my friend Del Bigtree, welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Eric, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. It's been a while.
Awesome. It's been a while. Well, it was recently we were at an event together up in Washington, D.C., reconnected physically. We were in Atlanta a little while ago also. And
Yeah.
so, but here, there, and everywhere. And, the one thing that is true is that you don't stop and we don't stop because there's a lot going on. So I want to take this time. People have heard you before that have been on our podcast, obviously, and the world knows about you through the High Wire, which is your internet show, which is award-winning and fantastic, and everything that you're doing, the work that you're doing for all of us, like I said. So I want to talk, Del, about the wins and the whys today, because the last time we chatted, we were fighting battles against, we had not won anything. It felt like we were losing. We were being attacked and vilified like crazy. And now here we are because you sticking to it, all of your viewers and your audience and the people that we serve, the doctors that we serve, the chiropractors in the communities, we're on the other side. So a lot of people don't know about the wins, and there's
Yeah.
been tons of them. So talk about some of these amazing wins that we have had over the past couple of years.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's really important when you are, sort of set up for battle and trying to break free, fighting for freedom. I love this topic because I think it's important that we do celebrate the wins. It's very easy to point out how big this Goliath is that we're against, and I always say if we were to write this down on paper, we would never have gotten out of the door. I would have sucked my thumb and curled up in a ball in bed. That's not how I'm wired. Miracles have been happening because I think, first of all, working with Bobby, of course, we're going to talk some about that today. But, you, me, Bobby, so many people like us, I think, you're wired to just say, I am a vessel. I'm a vessel for something so much bigger than myself. And how this all turns out is in God's hands. But, nothing's going anywhere if I don't take the next step. And so, all along the way, there's been increments. And those of us that are in the battle are aware of every step that we're taking, every little victory that we're taking. From afar, I think it's interesting to think, what does it look like? I want to just start just by how I sort of really launch into this. Of course, we know about the film Vaxxed, but after that, when I started my nonprofit, the Informed Consent Action Network, that was really about Aaron Siri. And I think he's a key player in, most of the accomplishments that we've had in this movement. And so just so people understand, when I met Aaron, every lawyer I had talked to up until then, I knew we wanted to get into courtrooms. They were all saying, there's no way to go near this topic. It's got total liability protection granted by the 1986 Act. There's just no way in. And I talked to Ralph Nader's people that were really used to difficult consumer advocacy issues. I talked to Danny Sheehan, who's famous for taking on difficult cases like Karen Silkwood and the whole nuclear industry. He's like, there's no way in. But when I met Aaron, Aaron saw the world a little bit differently. And what he saw was a way that we could use FOIA, Freedom of Information Act requests. And when I sat with him, he said, look, everyone is saying they can't sue because of the 1986 Act. I'm going to sue because of the 1986 Act. He said there's provisions in that. There's rules that were set out that our government was supposed to adhere to. They took on the liability. They are not doing their job. They're not doing what the 86 Act requires. We're going to sue them for that. And it's going to start out as Freedom of Information Act requests. And, the cat's out of the bag, so I can say this now, but for about 5 or 6 years at least, we didn't really describe what was our strategy, but it's really interesting, actually. Aaron thought not only were we going to use FOIA, which is this great tool we have as American citizens. Essentially, our government works for us. We are, it's, of, for, and by the people, at least in some of these small spaces. It should be everything, but that's part of our fight, right? And what he said is, with FOIA, people usually request things that they're trying to find, a study. We could go as far as, and we have, saying we want every email where Tony Fauci uses the word mRNA technology. Again, we get to read his emails because he's our employee. But Aaron did something that no one had ever thought of doing with FOIA. He said, we're going to request things that we know or pretty sure don't exist. And this has never been done before. And so what's going to happen is the CDC, FDA, HHS, NIH, whoever we're bringing this FOIA request to, they're going to say, what is this about? We don't really have anything. And we're going to say, that's impossible. You're stonewalling us. We're suing you. And then by suing them, we end up in a courtroom where they have to admit now in front of a judge, we don't have a study that, like, for instance, one of our lawsuits, show us every trial you relied upon to make the statement that vaccines don't cause autism for all of the first 6 vaccines given in the first 6 months of life. The CDC's website says essentially vaccines, meaning all vaccines do not cause autism. Show us the trials you relied upon. We know they didn't have any. And they're like, what are you talking about? So finally, the judge's like, I don't understand. They're telling you they don't really have anything. And he's like, well, then as long as they make that declarative statement and you sign it as a judge, we'll take that as the final answer. And those were little victories. And when I talked to Aaron, now we did this when we looked at the 86 Act. We said there's supposed to be a task force put together that's the head of NIH, CDC, FDA that is working on science to make vaccines safer. That is required by the 86 Act. They knew that they were giving liability protection because the industry was saying we're losing so much money from death and injury cases we can't make a profit. So you're going to make a task force that figures out how to fix the dangers of vaccines. And then that task force every 2 years is going to report to Congress and tell Congress all the things we've done to make vaccines safer. So those were 2 separate lawsuits. The first one was actually, we would like the meeting minutes that happened every 2 years when the Congress heard all the advancements in science around vaccines to make them safer as required by the 86 Act. Of course, eventually they said we never had those meetings. Those never took place. We got a judge's court, signed and affidavit saying never happened. Then we went into the task force. We'd like to know every, meeting the task force had and what changes they made to the vaccine program. Never happened. Disbanded the task force after, I think, 1 meeting. Great, thanks. That is how this started there. We started with death by 1,000 cuts, little things that these regulatory agencies didn't think mattered. Like, okay, whatever. What they didn't realize is we were unraveling very slowly and accurately, pushing into these cracks in the foundation of the temple of vaccine, if you will, that is built on the slogan safe and effective. We knew we could tear that down by showing none of the safety had ever been done. And so, if we're going to start out, I would say the biggest victory that involves probably 5 to 10 lawsuit wins against government agencies is right now, in this moment, you are starting to see a change in the dialogue around the idea of placebo-based safety trials for vaccines. This has taken nearly a decade to get to the point where now no one that I've seen in a major newspaper this year is saying it's misinformation to say that we never did saline placebo trials. Now what they're saying is, well, okay, sure, we haven't done saline placebo trials on the current vaccines on the schedule, but we did do it on the original versions of the vaccines, and the newer versions test against the older versions. That's not true either. We've already won cases on that. But what you're seeing is that we are now in an offensive position. We are pushing them back. I was just answering another win that most people won't realize is I was just answering to a factcheck.org inquiry where I said there's been no placebo-based trials of vaccines prior to licensure. And the reporter was saying, I have a science degree. And are you saying that they had to be saline placebos? Do you not recognize that there are carrier solution placebos and adjuvanted placebos that were used in trials? And I explained you are confusing the difference between a safety trial and an efficacy trial. In a safety trial, the placebo is described as having no pharmacological effect on the human body. So anything, carrier solution has neomycin, an antibiotic. It has polysorbate 80 and all sorts of other ingredients that we know have a pharmacological effect on the human body. Therefore, not a placebo when it comes to a safety. And an adjuvanted, I mean, we're going to inject someone with aluminum. Come on, the entire purpose of the aluminum to incite the immune system into an inflammatory event that, hopefully inspires an antibody production scenario, obviously not, having a pharmacological effect. So I say all of this, and we're in the weeds, Eric, because this is where people aren't really paying attention the way you and I are. We are destroying this idea that vaccines have ever been through a safety trial. And once I think the world really, truly wraps its head around that, I believe we're getting more and more people, more and more parents. So what's a win? I think just last week, Politico, announced in their own poll or in a poll that they were citing that the majority of people in America believe there are too many vaccines. They believe that some vaccines are bad for some people, and they want the right to choose which and when and how. That's a majority, including Democrats now in that conversation. We have never been in that position before. Similarly, a study, I think it was Brookstone Institute, showed that the majority of people in America, and high majority, between 70 and 80% of Americans, do not like liability protections on vaccine makers. And so the win, and why these are the most important wins, Eric, is these are wins in the court of public opinion. And this was why the work that we did at the Highwire, once we started working with Aaron Siri and we started winning these cases like there was no task force, you never met with Congress, the products aren't being made safer. We had gotten started, but we thought if a lawsuit wins in a forest and no one is there to hear it, does it really happen? That's where the Highwire came in. And really, we started the Highwire to start announcing what we were winning in these lawsuits and what we were learning. So that's sort of, I want to set that stage. And I know it's a little bit long winded, but we're going to understand the moment we're in. It's built upon that legal work, a lot of which was invisible, not even to, the audience listening right now, but even to the CDC, FDA, and NIH that had no idea what we were up to.
Yeah, the wins are quite amazing. Those are not small wins. And just so that I understand, to submit a FOIA request, you send them a letter, you say, please send us the information. They say, sure, here it is, and they send it right back to you, correct?
Correct. They have about 30 days to respond.
But they don't really send it right back to you, is my point. Like, you got to
Right.
battle it. Like, how many times have you had to resubmit and resubmit and resubmit requests?
Absolutely. So usually by about, I think, 30 days, they're supposed to give it to you. It's 60 days. Then we give them pressure. We have a citizen's demand. And then if they continue to stonewall us, we usually give them at least 6 months. And then if we are not getting the response to what we asked for, then we bring a lawsuit against them and we now move into proceedings. And those proceedings can take, a year or two. We did this, I think, again, one of the biggest. So outside of, suing, government agencies, well, I mean, I guess this would be a government agency, it was FDA, but I think winning the Pfizer data when the FDA was trying to hold on to that we're talking about the Pfizer mRNA COVID vaccine trial data. FDA tried to stop that for 75 years. And again, Eric, you can almost stop anyone in the country on the street and say, did you hear the FDA tried to hold back the data for 75 years on the Pfizer? Yeah, I did hear about that. Well, that was an ICANN case fought by Aaron Siri. really for multiple years. We won after a year, then they had lied about the amount of data that they had, so we didn't get it all. We had to go back to court, but we won the Pfizer data, the Moderna data to all the trials. So when Naomi Wolf goes out and writes the book, The Pfizer Papers, that book is only possible because of Aaron Siri and ICANN. And I don't mean that for me to take credit. I want to give credit to all the tens of thousands of people out there that have donated to our work, which is the only way we've been able to keep Aaron planted in those courtrooms, standing ground when they try to stall, they're trying to make it expensive, right? They're trying to just say, we give up, we can't fight this, it's too big a behemoth, and there's no payouts on this. No one's making any money off these cases, and that's why I think they thought they were going to get away with it. They thought whoever is going to spend years in a courtroom for a lawsuit that just is basically a slap on the wrist. All right, we never, had a trial. All right, no one thought there'd be a way to make that matter. That is what we have done.
Yeah, and it's fantastic, which is why I've been a supporter of ICANN for a long time. My wife supports it. My patients support it. A lot of our patients support it. Our colleagues, chiropractors, amazing supporters. And
Yeah.
I think back when I first got into practice, 1986, 41 years ago. Hard to believe. And I didn't even know that this issue existed. I was a kid. I was 23 years old. I got into chiropractic because I wanted to play football, or I got injured playing football, and I wanted to help a lot of athletes. And then I started hearing about in Atlanta, where I lived and where I went to school. I started hearing about all of these kids that were being harmed. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to have kids one day. What is going on? Why are all these kids getting harmed? And turns out a lot of them, most of them, many of them vaccine injured. And so to see that happening after a while, a lot of people, if they don't know about you or what we do or anything like that, they're just numb to it. They say, oh no, it can't be. Maybe it's only one or two, and they don't realize. But no, we have the sickest generation of children in the world. And maybe in the history of humanity, we have the sickest generation of children, watching the vaccine schedule skyrocket. And so, I think back, with the 100-year lifestyle, I often will say this: the 100-year-old people today, which is one of the world's fastest growing group, this is the natural immunity generation.
You're right. It's a really good point.
This is a generation that they were not vaccinated during their formative years, and they were not on a schedule during their formative years. So they built natural immunity. They got exposed to measles and chickenpox and other things. And so now here we are, because the why is we need to stop the trend of having the sickest generation of children in the world. And what frustrates me, you talked about wins and you talked about there's no payout at the end. These parents, they get mandated to have these vaccines, and then they're abandoned when there's a problem. So the burden on our culture, on our society in so many ways is very harmful. So where do you go from here? Like, what are the next steps now that you're revealing all of the lies, all of the things that were not true? I have two copies of Vaccine Amen, Aaron Siri's book. You talked about Aaron, just a hero in my mind. The courage that you guys show taking on the government in this way is just fantastic. So where do you go now that you have this information, not to revisit our old podcast where you can go back and listen, and you can go to the High Wire and listen to the things we talked about? What do you do with this information, and how do we make change moving forward?
Well, look, the greatest change is still the responsibility of every individual that is watching our conversation right now. We have special skills, Aaron and I, to infiltrate some castles, if you will, and fight from the inside. But ultimately, it's really those gates have to be stormed. The castle wall has to be, breached. And that's by the masses. And so the most important work still is to build this movement, or at least the understanding that you're a part of a movement. If you want freedom, if you want body sovereignty, if you want proper safety studies done on products that are being given to you and your children, if you want the right to choose and control your own body and be the leading decision maker for your own child. Think about that. In 5 states right now where there is no exception to the vaccine program, you are not the deciding factor for medical decisions for your own child. The government is. I see that as the government seeing that it owns your child. Your child is the property of the U.S. government outside of your jurisdiction. That has got to change. That is just, especially when we look at some of the scary things that are coming with AI and tracking systems, and that's going to turn to biometric tracking. And if they're able to do things, track your child, chip your child, where does it stop if you don't stand as a barrier between overreaching government and the health and safety of your own children? This is what wakes me up every morning when, as you said, when I work my butt off. I never stop because I don't want to meet the Bigtree that opens the door to the government coming in to do something to my child that I no longer have any control over. I don't want to meet that guy. I'm doing the work so that I never have to become whatever that ends up, what that moment ends up being,
Yeah,
So,
strong, very strong, and very important. And what's interesting is the other side is relentless. I mean, they have a plan. Their plan is they know what they're doing. They've always known what they're doing. They've known what they're causing. It is criminal in so many ways, and you see it. And you brought up the Pfizer papers. I mean, if you haven't bought that book, I bought probably, I don't know, half a dozen of those books. I keep them in my reception room. I hand them out to people. They bring them back, and I said, don't worry about reading this 2,000-page book. I don't know how many pages. I'm probably exaggerating by 500, but you don't have to read it. Just look at the pictures.
It's one of these.
Yeah, it's a hardcover, beautifully done. Naomi did a fantastic job, and so you see this, and the pictures, the graphs of the data is fantastic. So you don't have to be a scientist to really appreciate the content that's in there that says what you and I are saying. And so, we have, but then you have, because the other side has this agenda to keep us sick. I do believe that that's true, as insane and crazy as that may sound if you're hearing things like this for the first time.
Well, look, I'll hold down the line on a little less aggressive perspective on that. I don't go that far. I'm not saying you're wrong. It is a question. I haven't found the evidence of that, other than it's the sickest generation of children we've ever seen. We know these products coming from these industries are causing this illness. We know it's a toxic event. But are there people sitting around a table saying, let's add another vaccine to add more illnesses and so that we can sell more drugs? It very well may be happening, but if you've watched me and the work I do, I don't make statements until I can prove it. I don't mean to undermine your statement. I am just saying you don't have to go that far to recognize we have real issues. There are people, and I say this, Eric, because there's people that as soon as they have a brother or sister that's a doctor, they know that they're good people. And I think sometimes we undermine our own arguments when we make people then think you're saying that my brother, my sister, my family doctor, the old guy I go to is a bad guy. I'd rather just, what I do is stick to the facts. We know these things are making us sick. I don't think most doctors, in fact, I know for a fact, most doctors, probably over 90% of them, if not more, don't know there's never been a safety trial of a vaccine. Don't know that we've never tested the pharmacokinetics between multiple vaccines at one time. Never tested if it was okay to give them at all at one time. Don't know that we've never looked at the full 72 vaccine schedule that it now is by the time you're 18 to see, is that making kids healthier than those that never received any at all? Don't know that vaccine, that autism, there really are no studies, no good studies that show that vaccines aren't causing autism. You know what I mean? That all of these things, they're a part of a religion that they don't know they were indoctrinated into. What they believe is science, And that word science, they believe means what it should, which is has gone through the scientific method, has challenged the hypothesis, has challenged the product, and has come out on top, come out ahead. Instead, the opposite is true. It turned to a religion a long time ago where it claimed heresy and heretics of anyone that questioned the dogma, the hypothesis, the religion. So I just say that to say there may be a couple of really bad actors on top. I think Tony Fauci does know he causes a lot of injury and harm. But for the most part, they believe in something. They believe science has been done. Look at how Peter McCullough talks about it. Look how Robert Malone talks about it. Pierre Corey. These guys were all solid scientists that would have told you, yeah, damn right, vaccinate everybody. It's great stuff until they woke up, and then they go, they're apologizing to every person they meet, saying, "I'm so sorry that I never did my own research." So I just want to make that clear because I think it's important to understand the landscape and how this is, changing.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I accept your flip on that perspective from me. So thank you for that. I think that as a practicing doctor of chiropractic, I have to go attend 20 hours minimum of continuing education a year. I have to stay engaged. I have to stay involved. I have to do that work. So somebody's not telling somebody somewhere, if it's not the doctor, somebody somewhere is disseminating the information at the top, the side, wherever it is. And so I just, I hope out of this, because listen, I have family members that are doctors in all kinds of professions, and they're really great people. I love them, and I'm grateful for them for things that they've done to support our family in many ways. And so I have nothing against any of those people. I just think it's vital that every person listening to this or listening to the High Wire, watching the High Wire, starts to question everything. In my world, just simple things like from a chiropractic perspective, we have people that what the number one arthritis in the country, in the world, is osteoarthritis. It's degenerative joint disease. So millions and millions, hundreds of millions of people are diagnosed with this arthritis. And I tell our patients, I said, this is a very bad name. This is a bad name. This is a bad diagnosis and a bad name. And they'll say, why? And I tell them, because degeneration is not a disease. Degeneration is degeneration. And if it can degenerate, it can regenerate if you remove the cause of the degeneration. And you tell somebody, you give it a name, and all of a sudden it sends people on a spiral of, for the rest of their life, thinking that they can't do anything, or they got to take drugs or medication for the rest of their life, and they don't know what to do. They're having this destiny put in their lap. So I think the naming of things is important. The science and the research of all of this is really, really important. And I wanted to ask you about this because I find this very interesting. People that find the cure for something are celebrated. People that eliminate the cause of something are often vilified.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're right. And that is, I mean, you have to look at what is the financial benefit, right? What is the financial benefit of making sure someone never has an issue versus, having a product that can cure. And, honestly, I don't know when the last time we saw a cure to anything was. I mean, what we do is treat, and that's even better, right? And I might argue with you that even cures can get you disappeared or attacked. What they really love are treatments, right? What they really love is you just take this the rest of your life and you'll just be fine. If it's a one pill, you're done. They don't really like that either. But your point is well taken, right? And this is, we have watched the history of this. Well, Rockefeller on all sides. I just interviewed a homeopath. Chiropractors went through the same, attacks to really put, very specifically, you took an oil man and said, let's replace all natural medicines with petroleum derived medicines. Am I off base? I think that's really was the
100% true. The Flexner report, they hired Dr. Flexner to go ahead and pretty much squash anything holistic in the world and elevate pharmaceutical oil-based products as the standard of care, the gold standard.
Yeah, and so that's been going on for a really long time now. And where I do what I and just to just sort of mirror back to what you had said, it is important that people realize your doctor is not capable of being there for your best interest. I will say that. I'm not saying that they mean well, but what you have to recognize is they're totally unqualified to make you healthy, because what I really think we need to call them is what they are. Doctors now are just drug pushers. Or if that's really hard for you to say, and it's like some needle pushing heroin addict on a street corner, you can't wrap your head around that. Let's say this: they are the marketing salesperson for the pharmaceutical industry. They are the point person to sell you drugs. That is all that they really do for the most part. Or if you're, unlucky enough, they'll sell you a surgery, which then puts you on a bunch of drugs to recover and, all the rest of it. But I think that so when you look at it, you're right. The industry is designed to make money off of us by making us take a daily pill to stay alive. And usually there is a side effect of that pill. So that's followed by a secondary pill to get over the side effects of that issue. And at a certain point, both of those are causing some other ailment or, degeneration, if you will, in your body, and then you need a third pill. I think your average person is well over 5 pills on average that is on this pharmaceutical conveyor belt. So, yeah, no one wants solutions. They don't want you to avoid the problem. And this is why I'm working on a new project called Wisdom that is all about promoting holistic modalities and a totally different way of life. Um, because ultimately, what we're calling healthcare is sick care. They only concentrate on sickness. They don't want to talk to you until you're sick. The sooner, and by the way, they really love to preventively find out that you're on your way to a sickness, right? So it's pre-diabetic, pre-cancerous,
Yeah.
pre, and this is so that we can get you on drugs even sooner.
Yeah, and everybody listening, you're pre 100 years old. They're the fastest growing group percentage wise. So start making some choices that will have you live not needing those things. I'm 63, I'm on zero medication. My brother, same thing. My chiropractor's been my primary healthcare provider since I'm 15 years old. And we have so many of our patients and people that are making those kinds of choices because they're realizing that they can. And what is very interesting to your point and what you said about the multiple medications, visiting your aging parents and grandparents in the local assisted living center, and they have the pill boxes of the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday pills, the pill boxes, and it's a very scary and a sad thing, and they get numbed out. And we had a young guy that I'll never forget this. He came in one day and he said, "Yeah, Dr. Plasker, I have a condition called NPDH." And I said, "What is that? I never heard of that." He said, "New persistent daily headaches." I said, "I never heard of that." I said, "Tell me about it." And he said, "Well, they're new. I never had them before. They never go away." I told the doctor, "I'm getting these new headaches. I never had them before. They never go away. I get them every day. And they're in my head. They're
You
headaches."
have NPDA.
So you have NPDH. And, and so listen to this. This is crazy. And so I asked him, I said, I just can't, a 50-year-old guy. And I asked him, "Are you on any medications?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Can I see the list?" And he showed me the list of his medications. And I'm not licensed to tell people to be on or off medication. And I said, "I'm going to give you a homework assignment." And I did the homework for him, but I said, "You go look up at drugs.com and don't just look at the side effects. Click on the healthcare provider section and look at the listing of not just the side effects, but the percentage of that side effect by system of the body, cardiovascular system, excretory system, urinary system, all that stuff." So this is crazy. So with the 6 medications that he was on, the doctor who gave him this diagnosis gave him a 7th medication. And when we went down the list and we looked at the side effects, the percentages, he had a 251% chance of having migraine headaches from the side effects, not including the exponential impact. So I think that it's so important for families, like when you're talking about paying attention to what people inject into their bodies, bypassing the innate immunity of the body and
Yeah.
injecting it into the body, the aluminum, the mercury, and all of those things over and over again. We can go on and on, the monkey pus, all of that. You're setting people up to literally have their version of an NPDH somewhere down the road, because there's no way that the body, number one, it doesn't need it. And number two, the body doesn't know what to do with it all.
Yeah. I mean, this is the problem with medicine. It's, it's screaming for some kind of joke somewhere. We need to write a joke to explain. I'll give you my version of it. I was back one of my first video projects I was directing, and one of the kids that was shooting for me, would every time we're between, locations, he'd say, "Hey, swing by Starbucks," and I'd go into Starbucks. He'd get a large dark roast coffee with 4 to 6 shots of espresso added to it. And then, he always carried with him like a Monster energy drink or a Red Bull. I mean, just this kid was caffeinating himself at a level you just could not describe. And then in between it, he'd be popping his ADD, ADHD medication, was essentially amphetamines. And one day I said, "When were you diagnosed with ADD, ADHD?" It's like, it was like when I was like 13. And you've been on drugs ever since. Like, yeah. I was like, were you drinking caffeine like this, like that before you went into that, before you were diagnosed? Oh yeah, I've been drinking. I love this stuff. I've been on it, since I was 9 years old. And I'm like, and the doctor never bothered to ask you, "Do you drink caffeine in any form? Is there anywhere you might be?" He's like, "No, never asked that." And that's the world that we live in, right? It's just, and that's what I mean. They're drug pushers. They're not there to solve a problem. It would have been really easy to solve my buddy Randall's problem by saying, "Folks, you need to cut back the caffeine intake on your child. Not let's put them on a drug they're going to be on the rest of their lives." And it really is what this vaccine issue is about, right? And I always know, I know a lot of your audience gets this, but I've been really trying to get back to the simplest way to describe the problem that we have and why I think it's vaccines. Why I think when people are like, "Why?" There's so many toxic chemicals, Del. This is what every journalist will tell me. I mean, there's a lot of toxic chemicals. Why are you so obsessed with vaccines? Let me be clear. Let me make it clear. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Now, they'll say, "How do you know it's not the fluoride in the water or the pollution in our air or the plastics or the forever chemicals or, the pesticides, glyphosate on our crops or the hormones injected in beef, yada, yada, yada." And you're saying vaccines. First of all, I think all those things are terrible. And really, most of them are pretty easy. Watching Robert Kennedy Jr., most of those industries are a lot easier to deal with, and he is making real headway there. But when you talk about having the sickest generation of kids, certainly this country's ever seen, but maybe that the world has ever seen, and that the greatest nation in the world, with the greatest hospital system in the world, has the sickest kids in the industrialized world. And when we say sick, what are they sick with? There's really only two categories. They either have a neurodevelopmental disorder, which when you really drill down on that, more and more looks to be caused by an autoimmune gut dysbiosis that is causing an inflammation of the brain that is leading to neurodevelopmental disorders. So connected to some sort of immune dysregulation, usually in the intestine system. And then the only other category you have is autoimmune disease. So neurodevelopmental disorders and autoimmune disease. We see autoimmune disease at rates we have never seen anywhere ever at any time. And I also say this, we're the only mammal on the planet right now that our immune systems, for some reason, over the last 40 years, have started getting so confused that they're attacking our own bodies instead of protecting our bodies, which is immune dysregulation. An immune system that is so overreactive, it is now attacking our own cells. Now, we could go through that laundry list of all the other toxins, that I discussed, fluoride, blah, 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 glyphosate, but there is one. I always remember, what was it? I think it was Sesame Street that had one of these things is not like the other, two bananas, two whatever. There's only one of these products that you would describe as designed to affect the immune system. Okay? So if the crisis of your time is immune dysregulation, or better described as a hyperactive immune system, notice every drug you're watching in a commercial on television is some form of shutting your immune system down because it's hyperactive. It's hyperactive in causing scaling on your skin and in your hair. It's hyperactive in causing digestion issues, lupus, Crohn's disease. It's hyperactive and, causing arthritis, swelling in the limbs, swelling in the joints. It's hyperactive in, causing swelling around your muscles. All hyperactive immune system. And of all the toxic chemicals that have been introduced, in this 40 years, one of them does what? Incites your immune system into hyperaction. It incites it with an aluminum adjuvant, a toxin, to cause an inflammatory event that then incites unnaturally your immune system so that it overproduces, overreacts to a small antigen, that is in the vaccine. And though catching measles you will do once in your life, if you go the vaccine route, you're going to go through this process 3 times, maybe 4 or 5 times if you look at the adult schedule. The Tdap vaccine is being given 5 times, I think, by the time you're 12 years old. So we are not just inciting the immune system 1 time or 5 times or 10 times or 20 times or 50 times. Currently, 72 times by the time you're 18, we incite your immune system, and then we want to say, every doctor goes, well, the one thing we should never have to look at is the only product that's inciting your immune system when the crisis of our time is an overactive immune system. It defies all logic, and that's where I join you. If you are a doctor and have not made this connection yet and are still thinking there's no way vaccines should be investigated, then you are so effing stupid, no one should trust you with anything having to do with their life.
I knew you'd come around. But and those chemicals and those elements cross the blood-brain barrier because they're in a
Yes.
format that crosses the blood-brain barrier. So, I mean, listen, like I said, we can go on and on. What I love about being a chiropractor for 41 years, practicing with my son, raising my family this way, seeing my 4 grandchildren being this way. You met my grandchildren. They love meeting you and getting pictures with you. So thank you for that. It's amazing. The body's innate ability to adapt is extraordinary. These people that live to 80, 90, 100 years old, if they are healthy, which many of them are, and many of them, the reason why they got there is because of their body's ability to adapt. If you trust your body's ability to adapt, you keep it neurologically sound. That's what we do chiropractically. You keep nutritionally sound. You keep the toxins to a minimum. It's amazing what your body could do, the self-healing capabilities. And, I think we talk a lot about in our world, we talk about the silent miracles and the loud miracles. And the loud miracles are the people that overcome. They overcome the challenges, they overcome the diseases, they overcome the issues that affect them. And because these are cures, so to speak, or these people got cured or they got helped, it's celebrated. Think about silent miracles, the non-stories, the people that just stay healthy, the human potential stories that they don't have to say, I cured myself of this. I lived to 100 healthy with no disease and functioning, and I got my great, 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 great grandchildren that I'm seeing. And,
Yeah.
that's the kind of world that I think that ultimately down the road, if you get your way with the work that you're doing, if we get our way with the work that we're doing, this world is going to be so much of a different place, healthier place because of all of that. So any closing thoughts before we wind down and say goodbye until the next time?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, when it comes to victories, we've won back the religious exemption from Mississippi. We won it in court in West Virginia, but now it's been appealed. And just so people that are tracking the work that we're doing, we actually have 3 cases that we think are excellent cases. As Aaron says, a good case, good facts make for good cases. We have three really solid cases that look to be on their way to the Supreme Court. And when you ask yourself, at the heart of what it is Aaron and I have been trying to do, ultimately, we're on a very specific journey, taking baby steps to get to the Supreme Court to hopefully undo Jacobson versus Massachusetts. I don't know if many people really know that the right to forcibly inject you with a vaccine is only made possible by a Supreme Court decision that happened all the way back in 1905, when a minister tried to reject a smallpox vaccine, fought it all the way to the Supreme Court, and lost. Ironically, he didn't end up having to get the vaccine at that point. They just made him pay, I think it was a $5 fine. Probably pretty steep for that time. But I think most of us say, fine, give me a fine. That has, but, and I've argued, even I had a debate with Alan Dershowitz on this. I think you're going too far to say it allows you to forcibly inject me. Maybe you could charge me a fine. But our goal has been to get the right case back up in front of the Supreme Court in an environment and in a culture where this conversation is changing. And so to sort of finish up what we're saying, Robert Kennedy Jr., HHS Secretary, that's like a victory from God. None of us ever imagined that was possible. We should be careful to not think that now I can go to sleep and it's all over and he's just going to fix it through the government. I think we're all seeing, he's doing the most that he can, but that's a very difficult place to get much done. And whatever he gets done, we'll celebrate, and what he doesn't will be left back on our shoulders to work out. But the court of public opinion is what ends up affecting Supreme Court decisions. Gay marriage, whether you like it or not, hit a point where across America, so many people believed it was a right that should be there that the Supreme Court, after denying it for a century, finally came full circle and said, you know what, we're going to go with where everyone's at on this. We believe that's where vaccines are at. This conversation, we're moving into a majority position and belief system now that, and that belief is not whether you think you want to vaccinate or not. It is, do you think you should have the right to choose when you vaccinate, how often you vaccinate, how many boosters you get? All of those things, more and more, I think people are realizing, well, yeah, I want that choice. That is what we want to bring before the Supreme Court. And should God bless us in the next year or two with these cases that are really great cases getting the Supreme Court, that could shift this conversation forever. But that's where, don't wait for Aaron to do it. What we want is the majority opinion of this nation to be standing outside of that Supreme Court saying, this is what we want, which requires each one of us right now to get back to learning how to have a dialogue and a conversation with people that maybe you don't agree with. I might say something like, hey, did you get the latest COVID booster? No, I'm not. I've decided I've had enough of those. And like, even though Pfizer recommends it, even though it's like the CDC had recommended another, like a 10th booster shot. Yeah. No. Interesting. I didn't know you had stopped on that program. Because, by the way, 9 out of 10 people have. It's a really great place to start this conversation. And then say, oh, so you're not going with the recommendation any longer? No, I'm not. It's interesting. What would you do if like the president of the United States said you had to get that booster shot? Well, I wouldn't think that would be like kind of like what Joe Biden did, or and if you don't, if, or what if Trump did? Like if they're real Trump haters, can you imagine? Like, what do you know that Trump might consider mandating that last booster, that extra booster? No, really? Yeah, I mean, well, just if they did, would you buy? Yeah, I don't want that. Oh, so you want choice? Yes. Interesting. Because so do I. I think we're aligned. See how there are ways into this conversation to meet people right where they're at, and then just say, they're like, interesting. I hadn't really thought about it like that. I've already had success. I'm telling you conversations I'm having right now. So
Yeah.
winning is in our hands. The tools to win are in our hands. What you have to recognize is that this isn't going to be just a Del Bigtree, Eric Plasker, and Robert Kennedy Jr. fight. We are running out of time. We could have an election 2 years down the road from now. I mean, even the current midterms could have great effect on whether Robert Kennedy Jr. gets to continue on or not. But I'm talking about the next president of the United States, or if we get lucky enough, 6 years down the road, not very far, at some point, our government leader could sign on to the globalism that is sweeping almost every other nation in the world, that involves vaccine tracking systems, forced vaccination programs, AI monitoring what's under your skin and where you're going and how you're living. So if you think this is something that isn't going to affect you, or somehow, that's not my fight, that's not my hill to die on, I want you to lay tonight and just imagine that dystopian world where there is no freedom. Our government, like all the governments of the world, will arrest you for saying, for tweeting things or saying things on your Instagram like, I don't believe in this vaccine, or I don't think we should be locked down. If that can throw you in jail, if you can't opt out of a vaccine program, if informed consent disappears and now there's airplanes spraying man-made viruses upon you as a way to somehow stop the God-created natural environment or viruses, if that's not a world that you want to leave to your children and you'd feel bad if you did, then this is your hill to die on. And that's what I want you to know. I don't think there's a bigger issue in the world today. There's not a bigger issue for the United States of America. It's not fractional reserve banking. That's a problem, but that one is not going to control your body. It's not, chemtrails are bad, but that's not going to fully control your body. And by the way, they're doing that to themselves too. This is about specific delivery systems to control your health, how long you live, what you can and can't do. We got to win this fight, and we got to win it now. And we should really be taking advantage of a sympathetic HHS leader right now while we've got him.
I agree. And, Bobby's doing a great job up in Washington, D.C. He's fighting like crazy. I can't even imagine what he's up against. We were up there. That's why we were up there for a MAHA meeting, Make America Healthy Again
Yeah.
meeting. Is where we saw each other last. And for all of you listening, please follow what we're doing. We have a new season that we're launching here. So we got a lot of great interviews that we have. Go to the High Wire, support the ICANN, the Informed Consent Action Network, support MAHA. This is a time in history, it wasn't that long ago that we did an interview like this that got censored.
Yeah.
So
That's right. And let me make one more plug. Go to an inconvenientstudy.com and check out my latest film. I think it's the best tool I've ever made. If you want to introduce someone to this topic in a way that's going to blow their minds, it's the best. It's free. www.aninconvenientstudy.com.
give a quickie about what
amazing.
that's about, because I think that's really important. I can't
It's
believe we
really
didn't get to it.
amazing. While I was traveling with Vax in 2016, someone introduced me to the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health, one of the biggest research institutes in the world. I challenged that scientist, Dr. Marcus Zervos. We were having a debate. He was obviously pro-vaccine. I was saying, I'm seeing a lot of injury. It's out there. And I challenged him, why don't you prove me wrong? Do a vaccinated versus completely unvaccinated comparative trial. He agreed to do it at that dinner. That was 2016. He finally did it by 2020 and then refused to publish it. Ultimately, I tried for a couple of years to get it published. It was the middle of COVID. Finally, I went with hidden cameras and recording equipment. I invited him to dinner. And that's the heart of the movie. There's a lot to it. But wait till you see what he says when he is just being candid about the culture we're living in, how afraid he is to publish this study because it'll be the end of his career, and how much he believes everyone should know what's in this study, which is the most damning. This is a pro-vaccine doctor, still states how pro-vaccine he is at the dinner and in the footage. For a pro-vaccine institution, this study shows unequivocally that the vaccinated are the sickest among us. I'll leave it there. Go check this film out. It's really short. It's not even 90 minutes long. It just gets to the point. It's powerful. I guarantee you it'll be time well spent. And you'll know, I know exactly who I need to show this to.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So, Del, great job. Really, really appreciate the support, the friendship, the work that you're doing. Everybody jump on this bandwagon and keep following us at the 100-Year Lifestyle. We have amazing content on 100yearlifestyle.com. We have interview with Del on there, other interviews, earlier interviews. We have a great article that we wrote that is from Flexion to Kennedy. Here's to the next 100 years, that gets into the detail about what Del was talking about with the Flexion report and Rockefeller's way back. The details are all in there. There's tons of great content. And if you haven't yet plugged into and got into the Human Potential and Longevity program, it is available. It's only $99. It is a collection of resources that will help you live an active, healthy quality of life starting today, changing your life to 80, 90, 100 years and beyond. And so we look forward to meeting you on the road locally. If you're listening to this, come visit us at our chiropractic office, 100-Year Lifestyle, Plasker Family and Performance Chiropractic. It's the 100-Year Lifestyle headquarters here in Marietta, Georgia. And if you're in Austin, Texas, go visit Del at his home base there. And thanks for all you're doing, my friend. I'll see you on the road. Let me know if there's anything else you need. I really do, with all my heart, love and appreciate you, your courage, your leadership. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Awesome. Good, Eric. Take care.
Take care.